We're not told that you can be whatever class you are. We're not told that you can be whatever race you are. We're not told you can be whatever age you are, right? But we're told you can be whatever sex you are. So I'm thinking, why does that happen? Why does it happen with sex? Maybe it's going to happen with the other categories too. But I came to the conclusion that why they're doing this with sex is because sex is the one thing that you actually can't change, right? Because the other categories of oppression, like race and class, these things are not as fixed as sex, in a sense. Because race, it does exist objectively, but you can be from a lot of different races at the same time. You can also have a society like colonial Spanish America, where you had like 50 different races, you know, depending on what type of mixture you were. If you were 1/4, if you were 1/8, you were 1/16, and so on. You had different names for all that. You had criollos, you had mestizos, you had all these things. Or you can have a society that says just black and white. Or you can have a society where you don't even know what race is. That is technically possible. There is no difference between the races in terms of bodily needs or functions. The same with class. It is perfectly possible to imagine a society where there was no class, right? It can happen. But sex as a biological reproductive function is always going to exist. And because of that, they know that there is no danger if they take away the word woman, that all of a sudden they're not going to be women anymore. They know that we're still going to be there. They know we're still going to give birth, we're still going to have our period, we're still going to do the housework, we're still going to love them more and get less back. We're still going to be so nice to everybody who, you know, puts their foot on our head. They know that we're still going to be there. So it's okay they can take away our name. They don't need it. We need it. So I think that's a really important question. We cannot let go of the name woman. We cannot say, oh, it's okay, I don't care, you can have it. Yeah, you can have it, and next we have none of the victories we want anymore, because they're all gone. So I'm going to stop there. I've written a lot more things that I wanted to say, but I want to open a discussion and hope that you will have contributions, things to say. And remember, we are against the system, we're not against people. Maybe some of our enemies are threatening us, wanting to boycott us, wanting to cancel us. We don't do that. We like debate, we are for people, and we're against the system, and we like freedom of speech and to talk about things, because that's how we think that society should advance.
Are there any questions?
Or comments, or reflections,
comments, yes.
Or you don't have to ask a question.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your talk. I was reminded towards the end, there was one conservative theorist in the US, and she was actually attacking the transgender movement. And I found her arguments really interesting. I can't remember her name, sorry. But what was interesting for me, that this was a way to attack also the abortion. The same organizations that were supporting abortion. So it was like kind of double agenda in the attack. So yeah, so what you're doing is like, your critique is different.
Yeah, I mean, basically I want to say something about that, the difference between the conservative position and the feminist position on sex and gender, and the difference between gender identity. Okay, in a simplified way. So, conservatives think that that sex precedes gender. So they think if you are a girl, you must act like a girl, right? If you are a boy, you must act like a boy. Transgender identity theorists think the same, but the opposite. They think if you act like a girl, you are a girl. If you act like a boy, you are a boy. Feminists we don't see gender at all as an imperative. We want to do away with that. We think you are just your body, but you can be in any way you want. The body doesn't have a personality. That's our approach. So whereas conservatives see sex and then gender, and the trans see like gender and then sex, we just see sex and we want to do away with gender. We're against connecting personality types to bodies, right? In a simplified way. And that's the total opposite. We believe that the conservatives and the gender identity theorists have a lot more in common than what they have with us.
Thank you for your talk. I appreciate your work a lot. I wanted to say I risk sounding like a huge conspiracy theorist, but the same culprit that was pushing for prostitution and legalization, Amnesty International, is again pushing for self-ID in our parts of the world. And I would like to ask, what is there to do? Because obviously this is the cause with the money behind it. And we are being threatened, like you will lose your job, you will be ostracized if you express your opinion, we have to be quiet. Yeah, what is there to do? What is the next step? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, look, they were smart, like the lobbyists, both, you know, the pro-prostitution lobbyists and the gender identity industry lobbyists were smart because they got people into Amnesty. We should have done the same. I don't know why we're not there. We should get into all these organizations and make public policy. Or found our own organizations that can compete with them. I don't know what is easier, but I think we made a mistake in leaving Amnesty when they took the pro-prostitution position, because if we leave, then there's only them left. So the problem is that Amnesty, for example, has relied a lot on the sex industry lobbyists, like one, for example, in Mexico that they quoted in their statement why they are for decriminalization of sex purchase. And who was behind that? It was a pimp that's now convicted to 15 years in jail in Mexico for pimping. Who was the one making the policy for that organization that Amnesty quoted? So you see, they have been relying on a lot of lobbyists, but it's also because they managed to put their people in those organizations. So I just think they're really smart. They know where to place the people, how to frame arguments. We feminists need to do the same thing or we're going to be run over. So I think the worst thing we can do now is just, you know, retreat from the world. I know it's really hard to be out there because when you're out there, you know, you receive so many hits. So we need to be together. We need to support each other on this, not go alone. You know, have a strategy, go in there with other people and try to change their policy.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Kajsa, for being with us here today. So I have a comment and a question, actually. So my comment is, everything you are saying to us actually makes so much sense with this one example that we have today in USA, and that is Dylan McLean. Yeah, I think that's the name. So there is a guy who is a guy, and he's actually a performer. So the whole gender thing that he is preaching kind of makes you doubtful about his motives. But he's portraying women as imbeciles. But I mean really imbeciles. So he's now like a person who is chosen to present women in sport for Nike, and he's portraying women as ridiculous, and it's absurd. So that's my comment. But what I really wanted to say is that now we have this whole climate in the world where the women's rights, as we know it, as the original feminists kind of saw it, are defended by traditionalists, by conservatives. And I think that is really, do you think that is really a true issue here? Because we have this woke and liberal and free-minded people who are actually defending the whole idea of the gender who is based, and sex as a biology thing doesn't exist. And if you say that it exists, you are a bigot, you are a TERF, you are a every bad word under the sun. So do you think that we can actually, there is a way for a feminist community, a women community, to come together and stop this madness? Because it is absurd and it is madness.
Yeah, I see what you mean, and I think your first comment, your first example shows that, you know, femininity can be very profitable for a male, but not so much for a female. And I think that shows patriarchy's double standard. You know, some time ago it was popular, even in feminist circles, to say, there's one role for woman and there's one role for man, and both are oppressed in patriarchy. Okay, why that doesn't apply is because a woman usually, to generalize, is punished when she complies and when she doesn't comply. And she's punished in both ways. If she does what she's supposed to, oh, you're ignored. If you go against, oh, you're too much, go away, right? And this goes in like a lot of different examples. So a man can be rewarded when he complies with the traditional stereotype and when he goes against them. You see, and this is a very typical example of that. So he is so praised because he goes against the male role, right? Which kind of goes against the theory that males are so punished if they go against the male role in a sense. Maybe they are in a small village, but on a global scale, when it comes to, you know, as you're saying, sponsorships and things, this is a positive thing. Whereas I doubt that they would give the same sponsorship to a trans man, for example. So if it was about trans inclusion, you would have a trans man, it would be a different thing, but it's never about that. About your question, I think the danger is that when the conservative backlash comes against the gender identity movement, it's going to bring down feminism as well, because they're going to tell us that we were the ones that let that happen, and they're going to associate us with that. So, for example, a fight for abortion is going to be associated with a gender identity movement. You know, the fight, for example, to speak about menstruation is going to be associated with that. So, in the long run, because the conservatives are a lot more and a lot more powerful, you know, they're going to take down all of it. So if we had women's studies at universities, it was renamed gender studies. Gender studies was okay at first, then it became all about, you know, postmodern or post-postmodern queer and trans theory. Then it's going to be taken down, because the right winger are going to say, look at this, this is stupidity. You see? So that's the danger. So that's why we have to stay, I think, true to our line, stay as where we were, as classical feminists, and just, you know, write this one out and hope that we get out on the other side.
Okay, so I have 2 points. When you mentioned that you haven't heard about biological women in male sports, I heard about one example. It's Skylar Baylor. It's a swimmer in the United States, and it's a female that identifies as a male. And there was an interview with Skylar, and that person said, actually, their aim or goal was not to be the last in races. So basically, this person was like second from the last in one race. And, you know, it was really defeating to hear a female actually, you know, men are going after the win. You know, they're going after the victory. And female are just going after, okay, I'll be happy if I'm not the last one. So that's the first one. The second one, as you, when you said cis was denoting our biology, I wouldn't agree 100% with it, because cis women only encompasses women that are not identifying as trans, whereas the terms that are actually for women, for our biology, are menstruator, vagina haver, uterus haver, etc., etc. So basically those even worse dehumanizing terms. So those are just my comments.
Yeah, you're right, but you know, as we said, like, you know, maybe some women don't have menstruation, so what are we then? Like, if we are not menstruators, you know, how can we name ourselves? I mean, that is the big problem. Is there any name that we can use? Yeah, I guess that would be like the only encompassing thing. But if we claim, if we base our terminology on biology, then we would claim that trans men are women too. Maybe they had bottom surgery, so they don't have vaginas, so how can we include them? You know, and I'm still going to stick to the word woman. I think that in this new linguistic economy, what they have made is an economy where there's no place for a woman to speak as an oppressed person. Because as a cis woman, she's not oppressed, she's privileged. As a trans man, oh, you have male privilege, right? So how can you speak as an oppressed person? You know, and when you said about sports, I think, you know, when Simone de Beauvoir, she wrote The Second Sex, it was like, wait, we're going to get back at you, but we just have to think out how, right? So they waited, and then they thought, you know what? You were the second sex, but you're not even going to be that. We are going to be the first and the second sex. So you won't even be the second sex, you'll be the second of the second sex. So you have the male sports, where the men are winning, you have the female sports, the men are winning, and we're going to be the second in the second sports. And smile, because you have to smile. If you don't smile, you're transphobe. So the woman who's losing, yeah, she was training all her life to get there. And she's losing to a mediocre male who was number 400, and she has to smile. You know, I mean, is there anything more patriarchal than that? If you don't smile, you know, at your own oppression, you know, we will just obliterate you. And this makes me furious. I don't know how anybody with the slightest feminist consciousness can not be furious at this. I don't know the women that are saying, I don't care about sports anyway. It's not so important. You know, I don't know, where is their feminist consciousness? Where is it coming from? Do they not have anything left? Or maybe they're just trying to survive. Maybe they're scared and they're thinking like, I just have to say this, otherwise, you know, they will ruin my career.
Ima li još pitanja?
Thank you, Kajsa, very much. Very inspiring talk. I maybe need some help with my English in public. I want to tell us something about political level you mentioned at the beginning of talk between, you know, this alliance of neoliberal right and postmodern so-called left. You know, before we know we have NGOs for women's rights, we have left parties as support. But now what we have, what we can do on political level to fight for women's rights. You know, I'm talking like ex-feminist activists in a political party and in an organization who are now, you know, pro-gender everything. You talked about. So I really need some comment from you on that topic.
You mean like on the governmental level?
Yes, on the governmental level and any activist level. You know, we have NGOs for women's rights with those agenda. You know,
yeah,
we have. It's very, very hard to act.
Try to go in there. Is the camera on? Try to go in there, a lot of you that have the same position. And then when you are majority, you can change their policy. You know, I mean, because, you know, our mistake is we went alone, like kamikaze. We went one by one, like, hello, I just think, and then we were just cut down. So I think my lesson anyway is, you know, next time we will go together, go into an organization and make sure that they defend the rights of women. Because, you know, the thing is that the trans activists, when they go against you, they always go against one person. They always pick one person. They don't go against like a whole group. They will go all of them against one person until they shut you down, then they will go for the next person. So they always have the strategy, go a lot of people against one person. When that happens, they isolate one person. They create this fear around that person, so nobody wants to associate because they think it's going to happen to me. So nobody's supporting. So I think the important thing is that we know that happens, we go together, we stick together. The Spanish feminists are great at that. The Spanish feminists, when they attack one, oh my God, they get thousands of them against, like, woo, you know, they come like bees, like, so, you know, the trans activists are kind of have to back down. So they are really solidaric, you know, they don't let anybody go there alone. And maybe, I think it's also because they have WhatsApp groups. So all the feminists have WhatsApp groups and they're posting, help me out on Facebook. Come to this thread, everybody's going there. Help me out here, you know. Let's all go to this meeting, you know, they all go together. So it shows strength, you know.
Just like we do today.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Još pitanja?
Nada.
Oprosti.
Just say something.
Do you think that it's really worth it to fight on social media? Because we are thinking that maybe it's a good idea to go off social media and speak
And where
about
would you go instead?
real public, real spaces. Yeah, like, okay, we're trying, not on a good track right now, but it will be better. We think that it's better to that discussion put in public.
But do you mean like public events like this?
Yeah.
With them or
Because on social media there are a lot of fake profiles. They may make fake profiles to insult you and to leave really bad comments, and it's really terrifying. I mean, there are like threats of violence, sexual violence, different images. It's really hard when you're on social media, and they are like organized. When there one comment, like gender critical comment, they're like coming in, many of them with insults and everything. So I'm just thinking, is it worth it to be on social media when it's that atmosphere?
It's not discussion, but it's...
Yeah, I know it's not discussion. I mean, I think social media is too important to be left alone because, you know, a lot of young people, that's how they learn about politics. So if all they see is that, then, you know, they're not going to know that you exist. But I think maybe choose your battles. Maybe if, like, you are 10 people, you decide, let's do this one. Maybe you do it on your own account. On your own account, you have power. You can, you know, take away the comments that are really hateful and hurtful. Maybe don't go to their account, because on their account, they have the power. So, you know, or if you go to their account, you decide, okay, we do it now at 7 o'clock. So you all go. You don't wait until somebody's sleeping for 24 hours and then, you know, you're all alone there. So, you know, plan it maybe. And I think another arena that's really important, the political arena, lobbying to politicians is very important. Literary, you know, to write books, because on social media it disappears. You do a lot of work and then it's gone. If you write a book, you know, it's still like, it stays, you know. So that's very important as well. The public arena is important, but it's not as important as it used to be. You know? Maybe it's important just to meet, to feel the strength, to feel the solidarity, not so much in terms of convincing others, maybe.
Yeah, but it's really important for that solidarity, because I usually have that sense that we are dehumanized. I mean, they speak of us like we deserve worse. I mean, it's really, I don't, we should really be supportive for each other. I mean, because this is hard. I mean, for mental health also. So, okay, that's it.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's crazy because a lot of the time it's coming from other women, other feminists that you didn't think were capable of that type of abuse and of not engaging in a debate, of not speaking to you as a human being. I think that's really historically new, and I think it also shows that this battle is important. I wrote down another thing I just want to say before, like another kind of myth or something that people say, like, oh, it's just a few people. Have you heard that? Oh, it's just a few. A lot of males in the left wing, they will tell me, why do you care about that? You know, when I was going to write this book, they told me, don't do that. Why? You should write about climate change or, you know, the war or something like that. This is just a few people, you know? And I'm like, well, you know, it's not a few people. It's about legislation. It's about changing the laws, you know? And then, for example, I said, You know about the guy who went to prison and he changed his sex and he went to women's prison? Oh, that's just one person. And then I thought, okay, so a few is important or a few is not important. So we have to decide on this matter before we decide, because when they say that this guy is going to change from male to female prison, he's also a few, he's one person. Why they have to change the law because of him? They can leave him there, it's okay. No, then he's one person, very important. Oh, it's one person, oh, think of him. But all of a sudden when it's the women affected in the women's prison, oh, it's just a few. So a few is important or not? You know, that's the question. Like, I think a few males seems to be very important, but a few women are not important. So we have to throw that question back. Why are you changing the laws in a whole country? Why are you changing the language just for a few people? Why are you changing everything in the culture? Why are companies changing the way they speak just for a few people? Then it's not really a few, is it? You know, so then the question is to them, why is this a big debate? It's not to us. And another thing that I hear a lot is like, oh, that's a cult, you know, that's a sect. Even feminists say that. Oh, that's a sect, they're just crazy, they're in their own bubble. No, it's not. This is hegemony. This is like on governmental level. This is companies, this is governments, this is, you know, big organizations like the UN and NGOs changing their language. It's not a small sect like Jehovah's Witness, you know. Maybe people are acting like a sect, but this is really a hegemonic change in how we as societies are going to look at the definition of sex. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking because somebody mentioned Amnesty International, and you comment that maybe we shouldn't leave those organizations who are betraying basic feminist principles. But I think that it is impossible to work in that environment, because their position is really on their position on prostitution and surrogacy and gender identity is profitable, and they will not change their agenda and their position because you know, if a few of us is in the organization, they will just, you know, we will just get fired because they are doing that. But I think that a good alternative to that would be to self-organize and to make stronger social movements who can be loud and who can be visible, and to connect with other feminists organizations who are on the line. Because I think that working in it's impossible to even work in international organizations now, in the UN, any international organization, because they are on the liberal position to, especially to gender identity.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Sometimes you can find a local chapter where there are not so many people. And if you can, for example, the Swedish section of Amnesty International, they did not support the decriminalization of sex purchase. So they voted against. And I think you can find sometimes a local chapter that doesn't have so many people. You still get to use their name, but it's just a few people. I mean, I just think their strategy has been so successful. You know? It's like the Yoga Karta principles. Everybody thinks it's some kind of UN document. It's just some people that met somewhere and decided something and oh, principles. Like, you know, that's a really successful strategy. Like, you make yourself look like an official organization when you're not. You blow yourself up, you make yourself look like so many people when it's just a few people, you make it look official when it's not official, you know, you connect it to a big name. So yeah, if we can form organizations that can compete with them, that's good. If we can't, maybe we can, you know, try to lobby within in some places, not in the big structure, but in the small chapters maybe. Because sometimes when you look at NGOs, people have a lot of respect for them, but you know, locally it can be anybody who joins these. You know,